Hollywood's golden age was built on illusions of perfection, poise, and untouchable glamour. But behind the silver screen and studio-controlled publicity machines were real people, flawed, impulsive, and all too human. These 15 incidents became infamous not for their scandal, but for exposing the truth beneath the myth. From flying toupees to pantsless courtroom chaos, these are the 15 most embarrassing moments Golden Age Hollywood could never hide. Tallula Bankhead, the commando catastrophe. Tallula Bankhead was the embodiment of outrageous charm. Her sultry voice, bold demeanor, and scandalous quips made her one of the most unforgettable personalities of stage and screen. But during the 1944 filming of Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat, her choice to go without underwear became more than just a personal preference. It became a cinematic obstacle. The set of Lifeboat was notoriously cramped. Most scenes took place on a single lifeboat set where actors had to climb up and down ladders under tight camera angles. It didn't take long for crew members to notice that every time Bankhead ascended a ladder, they were getting far more of a show than expected. The situation escalated to the point where cinematographer Arthur Miller had to discreetly raise the issue with Hitchcock. The director, unshaken as ever, reportedly replied, "I don't know whether this is a matter for wardrobe, makeup, or hairdressing." Word of the incident spread quickly through Hollywood. Despite occurring in a pre-TMZ era, it became an industry legend. When asked by a reporter about the rumors, Bankhead quipped, "Darling, I've gone without underwear for years. It makes for a quick wash day." Then, with typical flair, she added, "And you never know when you'll need to seduce someone at a moment's notice." Far from being embarrassed, Bankhead leaned into the moment. Her unapologetic attitude and ability to turn humiliation into comedy cemented her legacy as a star who wasn't afraid to be seen as human or outrageous. She understood that notoriety, when wielded with confidence, could be even more powerful than admiration. In the end, the commando catastrophe didn't derail her. It propelled her. It transformed her from a dramatic actress into an iconic figure of audacious defiance, showing that sometimes being caught with your pants down, literally, can be a career power move. Bette Davis, the Oscar buttocks engraving. Bette Davis had no patience for pretension, and nothing exposed that better than what she did to her very first Oscar. In 1936, after winning Best Actress for Dangerous, Davis took home her shiny gold statuette and made a shocking discovery. The back was completely smooth. No backside, no definition. To Davis, that was a design flaw. So she grabbed a nail file and sculpted buttocks onto her Oscar. It was a moment of hilarious rebellion that flew in the face of Hollywood's obsession with image. While most winners placed their trophies proudly on mantles, Davis kept hers as a punchline, complete with cheeks. She showed it to friends, spoke about it in interviews, and laughed about it often. The Academy was less amused. They'd spent years building the Oscars into a symbol of artistic achievement. Davis's cheeky modification made them fear a trend of altered statues. When she won her second Oscar for Jezebel in 1939, insiders claimed the Academy inspected her statue before handing it over, just to make sure she wouldn't repeat her improvement. But this moment was more than a joke. It revealed the deeper truth about Davis. She never fit Hollywood's mold. She challenged studio heads, rejected roles she felt were beneath her, and scoffed at image management. Her Oscar moment wasn't about disrespecting the honor. It was about mocking the absurd seriousness with which Hollywood took itself. In hindsight, the incident became a defining moment in Davis's legend. It symbolized her refusal to be boxed in, her contempt for hypocrisy, and her willingness to be difficult in a world that rewarded obedience. As historian Janine Bassinger said, she understood the value of branding before branding was a thing. Being difficult made her iconic. Bette Davis didn't just take home the Oscar, she gave it character, literally. And in doing so, she reminded the world that even statues need a little personality. Joan Crawford, the bedside Oscar speech gone wrong. In 1946, Joan Crawford won the Academy Award for Mildred Pierce, but she didn't collect it on stage. Instead, she claimed she was too ill to attend the ceremony, retreating to her Brentwood mansion to convalesce in bed. Or so the story went. When her name was called, the Academy had to deliver the Oscar to her home. What they found was a fully made-up Crawford in silk pajamas, reclining like a queen waiting for her crown. She greeted the camera crew with a radiant smile, flanked by strategically placed roses and perfect lighting. Then came the speech. Crawford, reportedly tipsy on champagne, launched into a long, meandering monologue full of melodrama, tears, and awkward pauses. Photographers captured every cringeworthy second. What was meant to be a sympathetic, behind-the-scenes glimpse at a sickly star became a PR disaster. Worse yet, it was revealed later by insiders that Crawford had staged the whole thing. She hadn't been ill. She had simply feared losing. After years of rejection and decline at MGM, the Oscar was her chance at redemption. But she hadn't wanted to risk public humiliation by attending in person and losing. Bette Davis, her longtime rival, couldn't resist mocking her. "Someone get Joan a photographer and an Oscar before she falls down," she quipped at a later industry party. The public caught on. The faux illness, the dramatic photo op, the drunken speech, it all chipped away at the Crawford image of ironclad perfection. And yet, like many Golden Age embarrassments, it added layers to her legacy. She became more tragic, more fascinating. The orchestrated vulnerability backfired in the moment, but years later it added depth to the legend of Joan Crawford, a woman whose hunger for relevance could make her both magnificent and mortifying in the same breath. Clark Gable, the denture disaster. Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood. Rugged, charming, and impossibly masculine, he was the man every woman wanted and every man wanted to be. But few knew that behind his devil-may-care smile lay a secret the studios guarded with everything they had. Clark Gable wore dentures, and one day, that secret nearly derailed a romantic scene on camera. During the 1935 film After Office Hours, Gable was in the middle of a passionate kissing scene with co-star Constance Bennett when disaster struck. As the two leaned in for a particularly steamy clinch, Gable's partial dentures, already known by the crew to be tricky, slipped out mid-kiss. Not only did they become loose, they nearly ended up in Bennett's mouth. According to lore from the set, Bennett stayed shockingly composed. Without breaking character, she gently kept the dislodged dental piece in her own mouth until the scene ended, then wordlessly handed them back to a mortified Gable. MGM's publicity team went into overdrive. Crew members were paid off, fan magazines published puff pieces on Gable's perfect smile, and the entire incident was buried, almost. Unfortunately for MGM, Gable's wife at the time, the wickedly funny Carole Lombard, couldn't resist a public jab. At a fancy dinner party, when someone complimented her husband's smile, she replied, "You should see them in a glass beside our bed." That one-liner confirmed the rumors and sent gossip columns into a frenzy. But instead of hurting Gable's image, it somehow made him even more likable. Audiences, it seemed, didn't care that their screen idol had false teeth. He still had that swagger, that smirk, that magnetism. What's fascinating about this embarrassment is not that it happened, but that it had so little impact. Gable's charm was so powerful that even dentures couldn't dent his star power. In fact, it reminded audiences that even kings can lose their crowns, momentarily, but it doesn't mean they lose the throne. Marlene Dietrich, the onstage strip malfunction. Marlene Dietrich was elegance incarnate, polished, poised, and untouchable. In her trademark gowns and with her husky voice, she owned every room she entered. But during a 1950s live performance in Paris, even the queen of sophistication met her match. Gravity. Dressed in a sleek, sequined gown with a plunging neckline and daring slit, Dietrich was halfway through her set when the unthinkable happened. Her dress came undone. Not partially, completely. The zipper popped. The shoulder straps slid. And before the audience could register what was happening, Dietrich was standing in a pool of her own gown. There she was, one of the world's most dignified stars, suddenly half-dressed on stage before an elite audience. A stunned silence gripped the venue. Then Dietrich did what only a true star could do. She covered herself momentarily, smiled, and said with perfect timing, "I have been in show business for 50 years, and this is the first time I've ever lost my dress. I hope you're not too disappointed to discover what's been there all along." She continued the performance in a robe brought out by a stagehand. The audience, initially stunned, gave her a standing ovation. Photos of the incident leaked, particularly in the French press, who reveled in the contrast between her usual composure and this sudden vulnerability. In America, the story was more hushed, but industry insiders couldn't stop whispering about it. What made the moment legendary, though, was Dietrich's response. Rather than deny it or demand censorship, she began making jokes about the incident in future performances. "Tonight," she once said, "I'll try to keep my clothes where they belong, unless you want another souvenir." Dietrich turned potential humiliation into legend. Her quick wit and refusal to hide gave audiences a rare, delightful glimpse of the woman behind the myth, and they loved her even more for it. Red Skelton, the accidental profanity that changed broadcasting. Red Skelton was America's wholesome clown prince, beloved by families across the country for his zany characters and squeaky clean humor. That's why what happened during a live radio broadcast in 1949 shocked not only his fans but the entire industry. It was just another episode of the Red Skelton Show. Skelton was performing a sketch as his mischievous, mean whittle kid character when he flubbed a line. Thinking his microphone had been cut, Skelton muttered under his breath, "That's no damn good. Let's try it again." But the mic was still live. Millions of listeners heard it. The moment hit the airwaves without warning, and within hours NBC's phone lines were flooded. Over 40,000 letters of complaint poured in, many from parents upset that their children had heard profanity on a family show. Sponsors panicked. NBC executives held emergency meetings. For a few days, it looked like Skelton's career might be over. Instead, he faced the storm with humility. On the very next show, he issued a heartfelt apology. "As your guest in your home, my words were unbecoming. I deeply regret it." He took full responsibility, no blame shifting, no excuses. That moment of genuine remorse struck a chord. Viewers forgave him, and oddly enough, the gaffe had a lasting impact beyond Skelton's reputation. It changed broadcasting forever. Within weeks, NBC introduced a now famous innovation, the 7-second delay. This allowed network engineers to dump inappropriate content before it reached the air. Every major network followed suit, and Skelton's slip-up became the moment that forever altered how live broadcasting works. Today, the Skelton incident is taught in media history classes, not as a scandal, but as a turning point. A wholesome clown made a very human mistake, and in doing so helped make live broadcasting safer, funnier, and ironically, more controlled than ever before. Judy Garland, the Oscar letdown, heard around the world. In 1954, Judy Garland was poised for a comeback like no other. After years of struggle, addiction, and being unceremoniously fired from MGM, she delivered the performance of her life in A Star is Born. Critics called it the role of a lifetime. She was a shoo-in for the Oscar, but Judy had just given birth to her son Joey and couldn't attend the ceremony. NBC, sensing a ratings bonanza, set up a full camera crew outside her hospital room. They were ready to cut live to her bed the moment her name was announced. But then it wasn't. When Grace Kelly was declared the winner for The Country Girl, viewers were already watching the hallway outside Garland's hospital door. The camera awkwardly caught a panicked crew disassembling equipment and a flustered Sid Luft, Garland's husband, opening the door, his face etched with confusion and disappointment, before quickly closing it. The broadcast cut away, but the damage was done. For Garland, the loss was crushing. Surrounded by congratulatory telegrams, flowers, and even a prepared thank you speech, she had believed, as everyone else had, that she would win. What was supposed to be a triumphant return became an excruciatingly public humiliation. The public response was a mix of pity and outrage. Critics blasted NBC for manipulating a private moment for ratings. Fans were heartbroken, and Garland herself reportedly said, "It felt like I was stood up at the altar in front of the whole world." But here's the twist. The incident deepened Garland's legend. The heartbreak became part of her mystique, an example of how Hollywood chewed up and spat out even its brightest stars. Judy Garland didn't win the Oscar that night, but she won the public's sympathy in a way that no trophy could buy. Errol Flynn, the courtroom, pants-splitting fiasco. Errol Flynn's devil-may-care image and irresistible charm made him the embodiment of Hollywood masculinity. But during his 1942 statutory assault trial, already one of the most scandalous courtroom dramas of the decade, Flynn added a twist no screenwriter could have imagined, an unscripted wardrobe malfunction that nearly derailed the entire proceeding. On a tense morning of testimony, Flynn stood abruptly when the judge entered the room. The courtroom fell silent. Then, rip. A loud, unmistakable sound echoed through the chamber as the back seam of Flynn's tailored trousers split wide open. Normally, this would have been a minor inconvenience, but Flynn, ever the libertine, famously preferred going commando. And in that moment, Hollywood's most dashing rogue revealed far more of himself to the courtroom, including the all-female jury, than anyone had signed up for. His defense attorney, Jerry Giesler, jumped into action, wrapping Flynn's jacket around his waist and hustling him to the hallway. The judge had to clear the court temporarily as Flynn was outfitted with a bailiff's spare pants. But the damage, so to speak, was already done. The courtroom buzzed. Jurors were seen chuckling. Reporters scribbled furiously. And in the following days, the headlines veered from scandalous to farcical. While the charges against Flynn were serious, the sudden comedic moment shifted the tone of the proceedings. Some legal analysts even speculated that the moment humanized Flynn in the eyes of the jury, casting him not as a calculating predator, but as an embarrassed man caught in an unfortunate situation. Flynn was ultimately acquitted, and while the legal victory likely had more to do with inconsistencies in the prosecution's case, many believe the pants incident helped. Later, Flynn himself joked about it in his autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, writing, "It was perhaps the only time in legal history where a man exposed himself to a jury and improved his chances." Only in Hollywood could courtroom nudity become courtroom strategy, and only Errol Flynn could turn mortification into a punchline. Rita Hworth, the champagne shower catastrophe. Rita Hworth's presence could silence a room. With her flowing red hair, regal bearing, and smoldering eyes, she was the picture of 1940s Hollywood glamour. But in 1946, at the Cannes Film Festival, one awkward incident turned her from goddess to soaked punchline in seconds. Hworth was attending a formal reception to promote her new film, Gilda. Wearing a stunning white gown, she moved through the elegant French ballroom like royalty. But as she approached a group of journalists for a photo op, a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes tripped directly beside her. The tray tipped, the glasses flew. And before Hworth could react, several full glasses of champagne splashed down her gown, soaking the delicate white fabric. What happened next made it unforgettable. The wet gown clung to her body. The fabric went nearly transparent. Photographers, stunned at first, began clicking furiously, and a festival official, trying to blot the dress dry with a napkin, inadvertently lifted the material, revealing even more. Hworth, shocked and blushing, was ushered away. But it was too late. The French press ran the photos the next day, with headlines bordering on lecherous. American outlets were more restrained, but the whispers echoed through Hollywood. Columbia Pictures scrambled to do damage control. Studio head Harry Cohn even arranged for Hworth's then-husband, Orson Welles, to issue a scathing statement condemning the press for their vulgar exploitation. That only drew more attention to the debacle. Hworth, initially humiliated, eventually recovered her composure. But the moment lingered. She later admitted in interviews that she had never felt so exposed, physically or emotionally in her life. Yet in an odd twist, European audiences loved her even more. Her reaction, classy, vulnerable, and unpretentious, made her seem more real. French journalists called her La déesse tombée du ciel. The accident may have drenched her dress, but it also softened her image and endeared her to a new audience. In Hollywood, perfection was the rule. But in Cannes, Rita Hworth became human, and audiences couldn't get enough. Laurence Olivier, the Marilyn Wiggle fail. Sir Laurence Olivier was royalty in the acting world, Shakespearean, stoic, and meticulously trained. But during the filming of The Prince and the Showgirl in 1956, he made a mistake so absurd it left his dignity and his reputation floundering. Olivier was not only starring opposite Marilyn Monroe, but also directing the film. Their working relationship was strained from the start. Monroe's method acting clashed with Olivier's classical style, and her lateness and improvisational habits tested his patience. During one scene, Monroe's character was supposed to walk away flirtatiously, swaying her hips in classic Monroe style. After several unsatisfactory takes, Olivier, exasperated, decided to show her exactly what he wanted. He stood in the middle of the set and announced, "This is how it should look." Then the knighted Shakespearean actor attempted to impersonate Marilyn Monroe's iconic walk. The result was catastrophic. One crew member described it as a constipated flamingo attempting ballet. The silence on set was suffocating. Then Monroe broke it. "If that's your idea of sexy, no wonder England lost its empire." The entire crew burst into laughter. Olivier's face turned crimson. Word of the incident spread quickly through industry circles. Monroe, amused, told the story to friends at every party for weeks. It became the perfect Hollywood in-joke. Sir Larry flailing in heels he was never meant to fill. What makes this moment especially delicious is what it represented: the cultural collision between two schools of acting. Olivier, representing traditional British technique, was baffled by Monroe's emotional spontaneity. His attempt to control her through physical imitation only exposed his disconnect. In the years that followed, Olivier never quite lived down the moment. He referenced it briefly in his autobiography, calling it a miscalculation of tone and anatomy. But the image stuck. One of the greatest actors of his time, wiggling awkwardly on a soundstage, trying to be Marilyn Monroe. It's a perfect reminder that even legends can misread the room, especially when trying to teach a sex symbol how to be sexy. John Wayne, the toupee that took flight. John Wayne was the face of American masculinity, tough, fearless, and ruggedly handsome. But in 1957, during a USO tour in Korea, the Duke found himself in the middle of a windy embarrassment that no amount of swagger could conceal. Wayne, always particular about his image, had worn a toupee since the early 1940s. It was his best-kept secret, fiercely guarded by studio contracts and publicists. Photographers were forbidden from capturing him from above, and behind-the-scenes crews were sworn to silence. His hairpiece was practically classified information, until Korea. As Wayne stood before thousands of American troops, delivering a patriotic speech under a blustery sky, a sudden gust of wind blew his toupee clean off his head. It didn't just slip, it sailed. The fake hair took flight in front of an entire battalion, many of whom roared with laughter. Wayne, ever the professional, kept talking, but the damage was done. Military aides scrambled to retrieve the toupee while press photographers tried to capture the moment. The U.S. military, reportedly in coordination with Wayne's team, swiftly confiscated film and cameras. One studio insider later claimed the incident was treated like a national security breach. Despite these efforts, the story spread. Comedian Bob Hope, also present at the event, slyly joked in later shows, "The weather's so bad it's blowing off toupees," a clear wink to those who were there. What's most fascinating is how Wayne handled the humiliation. Instead of addressing it publicly, he quietly invested in a higher-grade hairpiece said to withstand a hurricane. Behind the scenes, he joked about the ordeal, but in public he remained stoic, as if nothing had happened. The incident revealed a poignant truth about Hollywood's golden idols. Even the toughest among them relied on illusions. Wayne's masculinity wasn't undone by a flying wig, but the moment served as a symbolic reminder that even the most iconic personas were carefully crafted. And for just a moment, the cowboy's hat wasn't the only thing that was removable. Joan Fontaine, the Oscar night panic attack. Joan Fontaine's lifelong rivalry with her sister, Olivier de Havilland, was one of Hollywood's most bitter. But in 1954, that icy tension erupted in a way no one expected, on live television during the Academy Awards. Fontaine had been asked to co-present the Oscar for Best Actor. One of the nominees was Marlon Brando, but another was Marcus Goodrich, her sister Olivia's then husband. The thought of potentially announcing him as a winner, thereby publicly elevating her rival's family, reportedly filled Fontaine with dread. As she opened the envelope and glanced at the card, her face went pale. Then came the gasp, "Oh my God, I'm having a heart attack." She clutched her chest and collapsed into the arms of co-presenter Audrey Hepburn, the show cut to a commercial. Backstage, medics determined it was a panic attack, not a cardiac event. But the live mishap caused a media firestorm. Audrey Hepburn was forced to finish the announcement alone, naming Brando as the winner. Meanwhile, photos of Fontaine being carried from the stage ran in newspapers the next day, with conflicting explanations. Fontaine later blamed an allergic reaction to seafood. De Havilland, ever-cutting, quipped, "My sister has always had a flair for collapsing at the worst possible moment." Audiences, however, weren't convinced. The timing was too suspicious. Theories flew. Was it sabotage? Stage fright? Revenge? The truth remains murky, but what made the moment unforgettable wasn't just the collapse. It was what it revealed. The rivalry between Fontaine and de Havilland had always been whispered about, but this was the first time it was undeniable, emotional, and public. It wasn't just an embarrassing moment. It was a rare flash of raw, real feeling on Hollywood's most polished night, and in that, it spoke volumes. Ronald Reagan, the chimpanzee urine incident. Before he became the 40th president of the United States, Ronald Reagan was a B-movie actor, and his most mortifying moment came during the filming of the 1951 comedy Bedtime for Bonzo, in which he co-starred with a real chimpanzee named Bonzo. In one key scene, Reagan had to hold the chimp lovingly while delivering lines about fatherhood. But Bonzo, apparently nervous under the hot studio lights, relieved himself mid-take. All over Reagan's carefully pressed suit, the cameras kept rolling. Reagan, stunned, muttered an unscripted curse word and tried to finish the scene. The urine dripped down his pant leg. The director, perhaps for his own amusement, didn't call cut. The result was an unusable take, but the footage became an infamous part of Universal's internal blooper reel. Word of the incident spread quickly through Hollywood, but Reagan was a good sport. He later joked, "That's the last time I work with an actor who drinks so much water." However, the humiliation followed him. During his 1966 gubernatorial campaign in California, political opponent Pat Brown reportedly had the blooper reel shown at a fundraiser. Reagan, furious, complained. Brown replied, "Politics is a lot like working with chimps. You better be ready for the splash zone." Even in the 1980s, political cartoonists couldn't resist referencing Bonzo and the infamous golden shower moment. But Reagan, by then a polished statesman, learned to laugh at it. When asked by a journalist in 1984 if it bothered him, he responded, "I learned early in show business. Always bring a spare suit." What made this incident so powerful wasn't just the slapstick comedy, it was Reagan's handling of it. Instead of being ashamed, he turned it into a laugh line. And in politics, as in Hollywood, owning your embarrassment is sometimes the best move of all. Judy Holiday, the interview collapse. Judy Holiday, known for her brilliant comic timing and Oscar-winning role in Born Yesterday, was no stranger to fast-talking, sharp-witted characters. But during a 1952 live radio interview on the Tex and Jinx show, she had a meltdown so awkward it left audiences cringing for days. Holiday was supposed to discuss her upcoming film and her battle with the House Un-American Activities Committee, but when asked a pointed question about her political affiliations, she froze. Then she stammered, then she cried. The host, caught off guard, tried to shift the conversation, but Holiday, in a soft, trembling voice, whispered, "I don't know what I'm allowed to say anymore." It was heartbreaking. The tension in the studio was palpable. The interview wrapped early, and Holiday left in tears. The moment was replayed on news programs and became a cautionary tale. Even the brightest stars could break under pressure. But what made it so fascinating was how real it felt. The woman known for always being in control was, for once, completely undone by fear. Public sympathy poured in, and her honesty only endeared her more to fans. She bounced back, but the collapse reminded Hollywood of the emotional toll blacklisting could take on even its most beloved talents. Gene Kelly, the split pants performance. Gene Kelly, the king of athletic dance, rarely missed a step, but during a 1953 performance for a live CBS variety show, his trousers split mid-routine during a leaping tap sequence. The camera caught it all. Kelly, realizing what had happened, did the unthinkable. He turned his back to the audience and danced backwards for the remainder of the number. When the dance ended, he quipped into the microphone, "I gave you everything I had, and a little more." Audiences howled. CBS cut away quickly, but the incident was already legendary. It would later be featured in blooper specials and industry stories for years. What saved him was his wit. Kelly didn't panic. He performed with flair, improvised with humor, and made the embarrassment feel like part of the show. It reminded viewers that the greatest performers aren't the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who keep dancing when they do. So there you have it. 15 unforgettable moments where the golden age of Hollywood cracked and the truth shined through. Whether caused by split seams, flying wigs, or unfiltered emotion, these mortifying incidents revealed the humanity beneath the glamour, and often that humanity made the stars shine even brighter.